The desert screamed with fury, hurling walls of sand against the metal body of Ibrahim Traoré's vehicle. It was not a storm anymore. It felt like the earth itself had risen to swallow him whole. In that very moment, the line between survival and destruction grew thinner than a thread, and he realized something no soldier had ever whispered before. Stay close till the end of this story, and do not forget to subscribe, because what unfolded inside that storm was beyond imagination. The roar of the engine struggled against the suffocating air as grains of sand pierced through every crack like arrows of fire. Ibrahim kept his hands tight on the steering wheel, but his vision blurred. The desert was not only blinding him, it was pushing him towards a choice between life and death. A sudden force slammed the vehicle to the right, dragging it into a hollow that had not been visible seconds earlier. He clenched his teeth, praying the ground beneath would hold, but the vehicle slid with a shudder before coming to an eerie halt. Silence followed, broken only by the endless hiss of sand dancing outside. Ibrahim wiped the sweat from his forehead, but his heart throbbed with unease. He stepped out, bracing against the storm, and that was when his boots struck something that was not sand. It was metal. Cold, hard, and buried under the desert's skin. He knelt down, brushing away layers of dust, until the outline of a trapdoor began to appear. His chest tightened, because such doors never stood alone in this land. Every instinct told him to walk away, yet the soldier in him refused. He pressed his hand against the surface and felt vibrations beneath. There was life below. Perhaps machines, perhaps men. His mind raced with questions that refused to settle. Who built this? Why here? And why now, when his mission was supposed to be simple transport across the dunes? The wind howled louder, as if nature itself was warning him not to open that door. Still, his fingers found the latch, and with one strong pull, the ground cracked open. The sandstorm above dimmed for a heartbeat, and in that silence, a chilling breath of air escaped from the darkness below. It smelled of oil, of metal, and of secrets too dangerous for daylight. Ibrahim leaned closer, and faint lights flickered in the distance underground. The sound of voices carried upward, distorted by the echo, but sharp enough for him to understand one truth: this was no abandoned shelter. It was alive, and it was occupied. His pulse hammered in his ears. If he went down, there would be no turning back. If he left it behind, he would forever live with the burden of what he might have uncovered. The choice was heavier than the storm itself. He tightened his fists, took a deep breath, and prepared to step into a hidden world where one wrong move could end everything he fought for. The ladder beneath the trapdoor trembled as Ibrahim placed his boot on the first rung. His breath was heavy, not from fear alone, but from the strange certainty that what lay below would alter the path of his nation. Each step sank into the echo of hollow metal, and the deeper he descended, the further away the roar of the desert storm became. Soon, silence swallowed him whole, except for the faint hum of unseen engines vibrating through the walls. When his boots touched the ground, he found himself standing in a corridor carved with ruthless precision. The air was colder here, biting his skin, carrying the sharp smell of iron and diesel. A dim light flickered above, painting the passage with uneven shadows that seemed to crawl on the walls. Ibrahim moved cautiously, his hand brushing against the rough surface, until he noticed marks, not random scratches but coded symbols etched by someone who wanted to be remembered. He traced them with his fingers, but their meaning remained a mystery. From the far end of the corridor, the sound of footsteps emerged. Not one pair, but many, marching in rhythm. Ibrahim pressed himself against the wall, his chest rising and falling like a drum. The shadows grew longer as the men approached. Their voices carried a language not his own, harsh and sharp, laced with authority. He caught fragments of words, orders, perhaps, or warnings. Then came the clink of rifles striking against body armor, leaving no doubt about what kind of men guarded this place. A narrow door stood to his right. Without a second thought, he slipped inside, closing it silently behind him. Darkness covered him, but his eyes adjusted to the faint glow of a single monitor in the corner. On the screen flickered maps, not just of the desert but of entire regions, marked with red dots and black lines crossing borders. His stomach clenched as he realized these were not simple maps. They were blueprints of control, plans designed to spread beyond one land. Whoever owned this base was not hiding from the world. They were preparing to reshape it. He leaned closer to the monitor, and the names of towns flashed before his eyes. Some of them were villages he had passed on his journey, places where children played under the burning sun, unaware that their homes had been marked. His fists shook as he scrolled through the files, finding lists of resources, trade routes, and coded messages linking this underground network to powers far greater than the land above. The truth stung like fire. This base was not just an enemy's shelter, it was a command center for something larger, something ruthless. Behind him, the door handle moved. Ibrahim's heart stopped. He darted to the corner, pressing himself against the wall, waiting for the inevitable. The door opened, and the glow of the corridor spilled inside. A man stepped in, tall, broad, his face hidden under the shadow of his helmet. He looked directly at the monitor, then froze. His eyes scanned the room, sensing a presence that did not belong. Ibrahim held his breath, every muscle tense, ready for the clash that would decide whether he lived or became just another secret buried in the desert. The soldier's eyes narrowed as he stepped further into the room. Ibrahim's pulse hammered against his ribs like a war drum, each beat screaming louder than the silence between them. He pressed himself tighter against the cold wall, hoping the shadows would keep him hidden. The man's boots scraped against the floor as he moved closer to the monitor, scanning the files with an intensity that suggested he was not an ordinary guard. His hands hovered over the keyboard, entering codes Ibrahim could barely follow. The maps shifted, new symbols appeared, and the scale widened to territories far beyond the desert. The soldier muttered under his breath, unaware that another set of eyes burned in the darkness behind him. Ibrahim's training urged him to strike, to silence the threat before the alarm was raised. Yet something about the man's posture stopped him. His movements were precise, but his shoulders trembled slightly, betraying unease. Ibrahim waited, breath shallow, as the man leaned closer to the screen. For a brief moment, the monitor's glow revealed his face, not the face of a hardened warrior, but of someone carrying a heavy secret. Then, as if fate chose to intervene, the soldier turned his head sharply, his gaze sweeping the room. His eyes locked on the faint outline of Ibrahim's silhouette. In a split second, his hand went for the weapon at his side. Instinct erupted within Ibrahim, and he lunged forward, gripping the soldier's wrist before the gun could rise. The clash was silent but fierce, two forces struggling in the suffocating darkness. Their breaths collided, grunts echoing in the small chamber as each fought for control. The soldier's strength was undeniable, but Ibrahim's resolve ran deeper. With a swift motion, he twisted the man's arm and pinned him against the wall. The weapon clattered to the ground, and Ibrahim's hand pressed tightly against the man's throat. The soldier's eyes widened, fear mingling with desperation. Then, to Ibrahim's shock, the man whispered in a trembling voice, "Do not kill me. I am not who you think I am." Confusion struck like lightning. Ibrahim loosened his grip slightly, enough for the man to breathe but not escape. The stranger gasped, his words tumbling out quickly, "I am forced to guard this place. I was taken. They watch every move. If I refuse, they kill my family." His voice cracked, carrying the weight of truth. Ibrahim studied his face closely, searching for signs of deceit, but all he found was terror and sorrow. The revelation tore through Ibrahim's mind. This base was not only a machine of war, it was a prison for men trapped between survival and betrayal. Before he could question further, a sudden alarm shrieked through the corridor outside. Red lights flared across the walls, casting the room in a sinister glow. The soldier froze, panic flooding his eyes. "They know," he whispered, trembling, "they know someone opened the door." Heavy footsteps thundered toward the chamber. Ibrahim's chest tightened as he realized his choices had just collapsed into one narrow path: fight through the storm of men rushing closer, or trust the trembling soul before him who claimed to be a prisoner in disguise. Either way, the next moment would decide whether he uncovered the truth or vanished into the silence of this underground world forever. The footsteps outside grew louder, echoing like thunder rolling through the underground corridor. Ibrahim tightened his grip on the soldier's collar, his mind racing. The red lights painted the man's face with fear, but his words still rang with urgency. "If they find us here together, they will kill us both. Trust me or you will not leave alive." Ibrahim's instinct battled with reason. Every part of his training warned him against trusting strangers, yet the desperation in the man's trembling voice carried a truth that could not be ignored. With a sharp pull, Ibrahim dragged him away from the monitor and toward the far side of the room. The soldier pointed to a concealed panel in the wall, his voice barely above a whisper. "Behind here, there is a maintenance shaft. We can hide until the patrol passes." Ibrahim hesitated only a heartbeat before pressing his hand against the panel. The hidden door groaned open, revealing a narrow crawlspace dark enough to swallow them whole. Without another word, they slipped inside, pulling the panel shut just as the chamber door burst open. Through a thin crack, Ibrahim watched as 3 heavily armed guards stormed in. Their rifles glistened under the crimson glow, and their boots struck the floor in sharp rhythm. One of them approached the monitor, eyes narrowing as he scanned the files still glowing on the screen. "Someone was here," he barked, his voice sharp and commanding. The others spread out, searching every corner, their weapons raised. Ibrahim held his breath, pressing himself against the cold surface of the shaft, while the soldier beside him trembled silently. The guards lingered longer than expected. They overturned crates, inspected shadows, and cursed at the faint trace of footprints on the dusty floor. Finally, the leader spat in frustration. "Seal the lower sectors. If there is an intruder, he will not leave alive." Their voices faded as they exited, leaving behind only the hum of machines and the oppressive glow of red light. Ibrahim exhaled, his chest burning from restraint. Once silence returned, he turned sharply to the soldier. "Who are you? Speak quickly." The man's eyes glistened in the dark. "My name is Yassi. I was taken from a border village 3 years ago. They forced me into this uniform. If I obey, my family survives. If I resist, they vanish. I do not choose this life. I endure it." His words carried no arrogance, only sorrow etched into every syllable. Ibrahim's fists clenched. He had seen men break under oppression, but Yassi's confession held the weight of countless others trapped in similar chains. Before he could reply, Yassi leaned closer, his whisper urgent. "This place is not only a base. It is a heart feeding dozens of others. If you want to stop them, you cannot run. You must see what lies in the central chamber." The words struck Ibrahim like a blade. Central chamber. A place that perhaps held the answers he sought, or a trap designed to crush him. Still, the fire inside him burned stronger. The storm above had led him here for a reason, and every sign now pointed to the fact that destiny demanded he walk deeper into the jaws of this hidden beast. The crawl space stretched into darkness, every inch suffocating, but Ibrahim pushed forward with Yassi close behind. The metal walls scraped against their shoulders, carrying vibrations from machinery deeper below. Each sound was a reminder that they were not in an empty shelter but in the beating core of something vast and dangerous. Ibrahim's hands ached from crawling, yet his mind remained fixed on Yassi's words. The central chamber. If there were answers, they would be found there. The shaft ended at a grated opening overlooking another corridor. Through the slits, Ibrahim saw lines of guards marching in strict formation. They carried weapons with polished precision, their eyes cold, their steps unshaken. The sight forced him to clench his jaw. These men were not protecting a cause, they were programmed to obey a system that thrived on fear. He turned to Yassi, who nodded silently, guiding him toward another exit that led them down a spiral stairwell. The stairwell was damp, the air heavy with oil and electricity. Faint voices drifted from below, merging with the constant hum of power. Ibrahim descended carefully, his boots barely making a sound. When they reached the bottom, a massive steel door towered before them. Strange markings were carved across its surface, and from behind it came a low roar like the breathing of a beast. Yassi whispered, "This is it. The central chamber." His face was pale, his hands shaking, as if the very presence of the door drained the courage from him. Ibrahim pressed his ear against the cold surface. Beyond the metal, he could hear layers of movement, hundreds of men, perhaps machines, and something deeper, something hidden. He pushed the handle, but the door resisted. Yassi hurried forward, pulling a card from his pocket. "I stole this from a commander," he said, sliding it into a slot near the lock. With a hiss, the door released, opening slowly with a grinding moan that echoed through the corridor. What lay inside silenced even Ibrahim's unshaken resolve. The chamber stretched wide like an underground city. Towers of steel machinery rose from the ground, pulsing with light, their wires feeding into massive generators that throbbed with energy. Dozens of screens covered the walls, displaying maps, surveillance feeds, and coded transmissions. At the center stood a raised platform, and on it, men in black uniforms worked tirelessly, their voices sharp, their gestures precise. But what caught Ibrahim's eyes were the cages lined against the far wall. Dozens of them, each holding figures too weak to stand, their faces pale, their clothes torn. Prisoners. Some were young, barely more than children. Their hollow stares pierced through the shadows, carrying stories of pain unspeakable. Ibrahim's chest tightened, rage mixing with sorrow. Yassir's whisper cracked beside him, "These are the ones who refused to obey. They are reminders for the rest of us." The weight of the truth pressed hard on Ibrahim's shoulders. This was not only a base of power, it was a factory of fear. Every generator, every guard, every locked cage was part of a chain designed to enslave both bodies and minds. And standing there, hidden in the shadows, he knew one truth with chilling certainty: escaping would no longer be enough. To leave without breaking this chain would mean carrying the cries of the innocent forever. The cries of the prisoners clung to Ibrahim's chest like chains. Each faint whisper, each hollow stare, became a voice in his mind demanding action. Yassir trembled beside him, his eyes refusing to meet the sight of the cages. "This is why I could not remain silent," he muttered, his voice cracking. "They take men, women, and children from villages. They crush their spirit, and when they are no longer useful, they disappear." His words fell heavy, cutting through the low hum of machines. Ibrahim's fists tightened. The storm outside seemed distant now, yet the one inside him roared louder than ever. His mission had been simple: cross the desert, deliver supplies, and return. But destiny had dragged him into a war buried beneath the sands, a war hidden from the world above. His breath slowed, steadying with resolve. "We cannot walk away," he whispered, his tone fierce. Yassir's eyes widened in disbelief. "If we try to fight them here, we die. If we stay, they find us. You cannot destroy this place alone." But Ibrahim's gaze had already locked on the central platform. There, above the humming generators, a set of controls glowed with shifting lights. It was no ordinary station. Every wire, every screen, every machine connected back to that point. If the heart of this underground beast was to be silenced, it was there. He turned to Yassir, his voice firm. "Then I will not fight them all. I will fight the source." They moved swiftly through the shadows, hugging the steel pillars, waiting for moments when the guards' attention wavered. Each step felt heavier, as though the floor itself wanted to expose them. Ibrahim's breath burned in his throat as they reached the stairs leading to the platform. But before they could climb, a shout tore across the chamber. "Intruders!" A beam of light slashed through the dark, landing on their figures. Rifles lifted, boots thundered, and chaos erupted. Yassir froze, fear choking him, but Ibrahim grabbed his arm and pulled him upward. Bullets clanged against the metal stairs, sparks flying as alarms screamed through the chamber. The prisoners in the cages awoke, their cries rising into the storm of noise. Ibrahim lunged forward, slamming his fist into the first guard who tried to block their path. The man collapsed, his weapon clattering across the platform. With swift precision, Ibrahim seized it, firing back just enough to clear a path. They reached the control station. Red screens flashed warnings as the system recognized the intrusion. Ibrahim's eyes scanned the panel, searching desperately for a way to break the chain. Yassir pointed to a lever locked with steel. "That shuts the core down," he shouted over the alarms. Without hesitation, Ibrahim struck the lock with the butt of the rifle until it shattered. With one final breath, he pulled the lever down. The chamber roared. Generators sparked violently, screens cracked, and the ground quaked as if the desert above was collapsing. Guards shouted, scattering in confusion. The cages released with a sharp hiss, doors swinging open. Prisoners stumbled out, their chains falling, their voices trembling with freedom. Yassir's eyes filled with tears, unable to believe the sight. Amid the chaos, Ibrahim stood firm, his silhouette framed against the burning glow of machines tearing themselves apart. He knew this battle was only the beginning, but in that moment, he had struck at the very heart of an empire built on fear. And as the storm above raged on, the desert carried his unspoken vow he would not rest until every hidden chain was broken.